This section is about understanding and preventing sexual assault. Familiarizing yourself with the content of the topic is extremely important to build your skills necessary to become an effective victims advocate. We will be covering many different types of sexual assault, definitions, statistics, and measures we can take as individuals, friends, family, and as a community to prevent sexual assault from happening. We will also be talking about myths to sexual assault. Please prepare yourself because this can be a very heavy topic. Let us begin our presentation with some statistics. Statistics sometimes give people a good perspective on how common things may be. In Colorado, 1 in 4 women will experience sexual assault in their lifetime, and 1 in 17 men will experience it as well. Though that number is a lot lower, it is still important to know that sexual assault can happen to both men and women. Let's take a look at the statistics from the Rape Abuse Incest National Network in January of 2013. 99% of rapists or perpetrators are male. 80% of victims are under the age of 30, and 44% of these victims are under 18. 1 in 3 girls are victimized. 1 in 6 boys are victimized. 1 in 4 female college students will be a victim. 54% of sexual assaults are not reported to the police. This is a very important number because we have to remember how many assaults go unreported and how many perpetrators get away with this very serious crime. And only 3% of rapists serve their jail time. In 2014, in San Miguel County alone, there were 34 reported sexual assaults against adults and 35 reported against children. And if the statistic is right, there are about this many that go unreported each year as well. For such a small community, this crime happens all the time. Though sexual assault is a very detrimental and serious crime, conviction rate doesn't seem to be anywhere close to what we would like to see. Out of every 100 rapes, only 44 get reported to the police. 12 lead to an arrest, 9 get prosecuted, 5 lead to a felony conviction, and only 3 rapists will spend even 1 day in prison. The other 97 will walk free from this crime. Okay, now let's talk about defining sexual assault. Sexual assault has become a catch-all phrase that has a lot that falls under its umbrella. Sexual assault is any involuntary sexual act in which a person is coerced or physically forced to engage against their will, or any non-consensual sexual touching of a person. Sexual assault is a form of sexual violence, and it includes rape, such as forced vaginal, anal or oral penetration, or drug-affiliated sexual assault, groping, forced kissing, child sexual abuse, or the torture of a person in a sexual manner. Rape is a forced or non-consensual sexual penetration. Acquaintance rape includes family, friends, teachers, co-workers, clergy, partners, dates, etc. Marital and intermarital partner rape is used in the context of marriage or in intimate relationships. Incest occurs when a child is violated by a family member. And sexual abuse refers to a child who has been sexually assaulted by an adult or another youth. There are many people that think that this is a very big gray area, but it is also rape if the victim is unable to give consent, unconscious, drunk, or drugged, if the perpetrator is in a position of authority, or the victim is physically helpless and has not consented. Some victims do not know that they have been sexually assaulted, but it is good to know that perpetrators might use physical force, use threats to get what they want, or make future threats. They might use drugs or alcohol to gain control of their victim, which can leave the victim unable to give consent. and they usually believe that they can get away with the crime, especially if they are in a position of authority. In most cases, the perpetrator knows their victim does not want to have sex or sexual contact. Rapists usually have three main patterns of intention: rapists who use sex as a weapon, rapists who believe that they can get away with it, and lastly, there are the habitual child molesters who have a deviant sexual orientation, which means that children are the molester's sexual preference. Sexual assault is about having power and control over their victim, and does not happen because of an uncontrolled desire. Consent can get a little tricky. So what is consent? The definition is an act or attitude pursuant to an exercise of free will and with a knowledge of the nature of the act. Consent is based on a choice, and it is active, not passive. Consent is possibly only when there is equal power that is free from fear and is non-coercive. Both parties must be fully conscious, and consent must be clearly communicated. A current or previous relationship or submission under the influence of fear does not constitute consent. How do drugs affect consent? There is a term called drug-facilitated rape. Drugs can limit a person's ability to stand up for themselves. Drugs can also create a powerful imbalance and take the conscious part out of the equation by making it impossible or difficult for a person to say no. Here we have a list of some of the more popular drugs used to rape: Rohypnol, roofies, GHB or liquid ecstasy, and ketamine or Special K. These drugs stay in one's systems for a short period of time, and they are difficult to detect. Remember that the drugs used to facilitate rape change and evolve all the time. Any substance given with the intent to take advantage of someone sexually is a rape drug. Some of the more common effects used from rape drugs can include loss of coordination, slurred speech, dizziness, confusion, blurred vision, feeling separated from the body, hallucinations, dissociation, short-term memory loss, reduced inhibitions, may stimulate sex-oriented behavior, can cause behavior that is violent or aggressive, nausea and vomiting, unconsciousness, stupor, coma, death, and so on. What could all of the above reactions be confused for? Well, what do you think the most common rape drug is? You got it, alcohol. 90% of acquaintance rape involves alcohol. I was drunk. How many times have we heard this as an excuse? This is a very common excuse used by perpetrators. Alcohol use does not cause a person to become a rapist. Alcohol acts as a permission slip of sorts. Alcohol does not create new thoughts, behaviors, or beliefs about what is right or wrong. How many times have we heard this one? I was really drunk. When a man says this, he is usually held less responsible for his actions. On the flip side, when a woman says this, she is held more responsible for her actions. This is a very dangerous double standard in our culture. We all know how stereotypes can cause a slew of problems. Here's the stereotypical rape scene. Thinking about who, what, where, and why. Who? What gender were they? How old are they? What kind of clothes were they wearing? What? What took place? When? What time of day was it? Where? Where did it happen? The location of the incident. And why? What were the motives? The big myth. The big myth is that rapists are creepy men who are all strangers. They attack their scantily dressed victims in the dark alley in the middle of the night. Well, the truth is that 85% of rape survivors know the perpetrator. This includes family, friends, co-workers, etc. Acquaintance rape is more common than left-handedness, heart attacks, and alcoholism. 1/3 of all sexual assaults happen in the daytime. Most sexual assaults are committed in the victim's home. And lastly, 2% of the sexual assault reports are false. This is the same rate as any other type of crime. One of the bigger problems that we face in this field is victim blaming, the myth that sexual assault is provoked by the victim, meaning victims ask for it by their actions, behaviors, or how they dress. 60 to 70% of all sexual assaults are at least partially planned in advance. Many perpetrators target victims considering that they believe that they will be able to get away with it. Here we have a list of sad but common reactions to sexual assault: humiliation, shame, guilt, and self-blame, fear of people, feelings of loss of control, eating disorders, PTSD, concern for the rapist, usually if it's an acquaintance, denial, anger, irritability, out of the ordinary sexual behaviors, grief, depression, withdrawal, and sometimes suicide. We also need to consider the male victims. As caring advocates, we need to listen, believe, and support. Tell a survivor it was not their fault, no matter what the circumstances of the situation. Tell them that you believe them. Offer options and a safe space to explore them. Emphasize the importance of the first 72 hours for evidence purposes. Prepare them for a range of emotions that they might have to go through. Help brainstorm ways to comfort and regain control. Here are the stages of a sexual assault hotline call. First, tell them that they did the right thing by calling. Second, determine if they are currently safe. Third, gather contact information. Fourth, tell them that what happened to them was not their fault and that you believe them and that we are here to support them in any way that they feel is best for them. 5. Offer options. Let them know that our resources are free and confidential and we can get them free medical attention. The sixth thing to do is ask them what they would like to do. 7th, call staff backup. In this section, we will discuss when to report child sexual assault. According to the state of Colorado, victims advocates who answer calls on the hotline are mandatory reporters of any kind of child abuse, which includes sexual, physical, or neglect. When considering minors, any unwanted sexual activity needs to be reported under any circumstance, and even consensual sexual contact might be considered a sexual assault crime. If person is under the age of 12 and the child has experienced any kind of sexual contact, it must be reported. As we head towards the end of our presentation, let's think about how we can eliminate sexual assault in our society. First, we need to stop blaming the survivors for what had happened to them. Second, we can educate our children that their bodies belong to them and to recognize inappropriate touch and to have courage enough to report it. We can also educate youth about how to set and respect healthy personal boundaries. We can educate parents on how to talk to their kids about sexual abuse starting at a young age. We can dismantle sexist attitudes, language, and gender stereotypes. We can eliminate survivor shame and shift the responsibility to perpetrators. We can stop consuming sexist media. We can get more men involved in prevention. And lastly, we can redefine gender roles. Thank you for being a part of our organization and